Griner. She's safe. She's on a plane. She's on her way home. After months of being unjustly detained in Russia, held under intolerable circumstances, Brittney will soon be back in the arms of her loved ones, and she should have been there all along. This is a day we've worked toward for a long time. We never stopped pushing for her release. It took painstaking and intense negotiations, and I want to thank all the hard-working public servants across my administration who worked tirelessly to secure her release. I also want to thank the UAE for helping us facilitate Brittney's return, because that's where she landed. These past few months have been hell for Brittney and for Charlie and her entire family and all her teammates back home. People all across the country have learned about Brittney's story, advocated for her release, stood with her throughout this terrible ordeal. And I know that support meant a lot to her family. I'm glad to be able to say that Brittney's in good spirits. She's relieved to finally be heading home. And the fact remains that she's lost months of her life, experienced a needless trauma, and she deserves space, privacy, and time with her loved ones to recover and heal from her time being wrongfully detained. Brittney is an incomparable athlete, a two-time Olympic gold medalist for Team USA. She endured mistreatment and a show trial in Russia with characteristic grit and incredible dignity. She represents the best about America. It is across the board, everything about her. She wrote to me back in July. She didn't ask for special treatment, even though we've been working on a release from the day one. She requested a simple quote, "Please don't forget about me and the other American detainees. Please do all you can to bring us home." We never forgot about Brittney. We've not forgotten about Paul Whelan, who's been unjustly detained in Russia for years. This was not a choice of which American to bring home. We brought home Trevor Reed when we had a chance earlier this year. Sadly, for totally illegitimate reasons, Russia is treating Paul's case differently than Brittney's. And while we have not yet succeeded in securing Paul's release, we are not giving up. We will never give up. We remain in close touch with Paul's family, the Whelan family, and my thoughts and prayers are with them today. They have to have such mixed emotions today. And we'll keep negotiating in good faith for Paul's release. I guarantee that. I say that to the family. I guarantee you. And I urge Russia to do the same to ensure that Paul's health and humane treatment are maintained until we are able to bring him home. I don't want any American to sit wrongfully detained and one extra day if we can bring that person home. My administration has now brought home dozens of Americans who were wrongfully detained or held hostage abroad, many of whom had been held since before I took office. And today, we also remember the other Americans that are being held hostage and wrongfully detained in Russia or anywhere else in the world. Reuniting these Americans with their loved ones remains a priority for my administration, every person in my administration involved in this. We're going to continue to work to bring home every American who continues to endure such an injustice. We also want to prevent any more American families from suffering this pain and separation. And I strongly urge all Americans to take precautions, including reviewing the State Department's travel advisories before they travel overseas, which now includes warnings about the risk of being wrongfully detained by a foreign government. Make no mistake about it, this work is not easy. Negotiations are always difficult. There are never any guarantees. But it's my job as President of the United States to make the hard calls and protect American citizens everywhere in the world, anywhere in the world. And I'm proud that today we have made one more family whole again. So welcome home, Brittney. And now I'd like to invite Sherelle to say a few words to you all. Of course, she's not excited at all about this. Sherelle, it's all yours, kiddo. Congratulations again.
Thank you. So over the last 9 months, you all have been so privy to one of the darkest moments of my life. And so today I'm just standing here overwhelmed with emotions, but the most important emotion that I have right now is just sincere gratitude for President Biden and his entire administration he just mentioned this work is not easy, and it has not been. There's been so many hands involved. And so I'd like to take a moment to just specifically mention a few. Vice President Harris, Secretary Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Josh Geltzer from the National Security Council, Roger Cartson and Fletcher, Schoen from the Hostage Envoy's Office. A special thank you to Governor Richardson and Mickey, the Mercury Players, the WNBA for your advocacy. And also, you guys may not know this, but my family has been tremendously supported by the Wasserman Agency. BG's agent, Lindsay Colas, has just been amazing for me and my family throughout this process. So today my family is whole, but as you all are aware, there's so many other families who are not whole. And so BG's not here to say this, but I will gladly speak on her behalf and say that BG and I will remain committed to the work of getting every American home, including Paul, whose family is in our hearts today as we celebrate BG being home. We do understand that there are still people out here who are enduring what I endured the last 9 months of missing tremendously their loved ones. So thank you everybody for your support. And today it's just a happy day for me and my family. So I'm gonna smile right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Mr. President, what has Russia gotten in return, Mr. President? What has Russia gotten in return for this prisoner swap?
When will Brittney be back in the...
You were listening there to the US President Joe Biden speaking following that breaking news we've been reporting today that Brittney Griner has been freed from a Russian jail. Now, the US President said he spoke to the basketball star, describing her today as being in good spirits. The US President, though, did go on to say that negotiators had been unable to free another American who is still held in Russia. That's Paul Whelan. We also heard there from the partner of Brittney Griner. Well, listening to that is our Washington correspondent, Ketavan Gorjestani. She joins me now on the line. Ketavan, we'll come to some of the politics of this in a moment, but just, the emotion of that, first of all, it was so clear to see, wasn't it, in that statement from Brittney Griner's partner, just what an ordeal this has been.
Yes, ever since Brittney Griner was taken by the Russian authorities back in February, she has been fighting and putting pressure to get her wife out of that Russian jail. And she managed to put enough pressure on the Biden administration to finally get a meeting with the President of the United States, Joe Biden, earlier in the summer. And she really made the case for her wife. She also raised the profile of this case because everyone knows that this is how things move. The more people talk about that case, the more chances there are that something like today, some prisoner exchange will happen. And just minutes ago, when it was announced that Brittney Griner was freed, there were pictures posted on Twitter by the president's team showing the president with Brittney Griner's wife in the Oval Office speaking to Brittney Griner just as she was on her way home. She is expected to arrive pretty soon after that exchange took place in the United Arab Emirates.
And let's move on then to kind of what we think has happened here, Ketavan. A notorious Russian prisoner has been exchanged for Brittney Griner. Apparently this taking place in Abu Dhabi. What can you tell us about the mechanics of how this all happened?
Well, the administration has been very secretive about what those negotiations entailed. The only thing that they were willing to say was that the channels were open, that there were discussions, but more than that, there was really not much detail as to what was going on. And that's something that they have long been doing when it comes to Americans imprisoned wrongfully, which is how they put it, because they believe that the more secret there is around these negotiations, the likelier they are to turn out to be positive. and to lead to the freeing of those American citizens. And that's why they were really discussing those negotiations. There's also the question of they didn't want to talk too much about what this was going to happen because they knew what the consequences would be. Yes, right now everybody's focused on the fact that Brittney Griner has been freed and everyone is celebrating that, but there are already questions as to why she was freed for such a notorious arms dealer when she was simply arrested by the Russians for carrying cannabis oil in her bag. The person, the arms dealer, Viktor Bout, who was freed, he was under a 25-year prison sentence here in the United States, having already served about 11 years. So the type of people that are being exchanged are really not exactly the same. The other issue that is coming up, and we heard the president really address that because he knows that this is where the criticism is going to come from, is the fact that Paul Whelan, another American jailed in Russia, is still in Russia. They weren't able to negotiate his release. He said, the president, this was not a choice about which American to bring back. We will not give up. He insisted that they were going to continue fighting to get Paul Whelan out, but that at this moment, Brittney Griner was the one that they managed to get out. This was the right time for her to be released, but that they will continue to work on freeing Paul Whelan.
Ketavan Gorjestani in Washington. Thanks very much indeed. We'll have more on this story.